Great, thanks. And will you take the slide down for us, Lily? Oh, perfect. See some faces. Wow. Okay, so firstly, welcome to the Performance Hub. I guess the Performance Hub is a sort of description that we've given this community, which has sort of been growing organically for the last 3 years. So we came up with the idea originally of just sort of connecting like-minded people who we feel like we get a lot from sort of seeing the perspective of different clients, both in sport and in business, and we wanted to give other people the chance to sort of meet and do that and feel all those sort of same benefits. So it's great to see so many sort of veterans of many of these meetings, and equally brilliant to see some new people who we're meeting for the first time today or recently met and joining us for the first time today. So welcome to everybody. That community, I guess, is about 100 people at the moment, of which there's about 30 on today. So brilliant to get people to come in and out of the community in that way. So I just wanted to start off perhaps by showing you a few of the people who are on today. Perhaps, I don't know if we've got a slide there just with the logos on. Yeah, so just a real mix of great brands of sort of organisations, both business and sport, and we'll obviously hear something from Sarah from the guys in a moment. But actually, brilliant also to get into some discussion groups afterwards and actually just share our experiences and around resilience and other things that are going on sort of at the moment. So some super brands. It's also lovely to have different types of people here. So there's people on the call with titles like director and manager, but also coach and psychologist and head teacher and coach developer. So people with a real richness of backgrounds and sort of different organisations. And I was thinking about this as we sort of embark on this virtually, that for those of you who've been to a few of these things before, I'm just thinking about all the places we've been together. So we talked about canoeing at the RAF club, for those that remember that. We talked about millennials and occasionally snowflakes in the RICO. We visited the BOA twice. Both times we ended up in the pub, once watching the Rugby World Cup, which was pretty cool. We cooked a meal together at Melee and learnt about innovation, looking through the eyes of some pretty fantastic young sort of snow and ski athletes, some extreme snow sports. So thanks, Mark is on again today for that. And we returned to school, to Thomas Beckett School. I think I can see Kieran there, is on, and we a lot of us were really inspired by hearing the story of the school there at Thomas Beckett, which has had a huge amount of challenges, and to see how Kieran and the team have transformed that school by a culture that revolved around love and loving the children, and actually the expression I think that we all took so much from, which was, it's not just about loving the children, it's the children need to know you love them. And I was reminded about that today, this week actually. I was talking to Dave Owen, I know he's here as well, from JLR, and he was saying that he was also inspired from that, and took his whole team down to see Kieran at the school. And in these kind of tough times, Dave is a director for JLR and in charge of the factory at Solihull. Factory doesn't sort of do it justice. There's 10,000 people work in this factory, so it's like being in charge of a small town. And you can imagine it's been pretty tough taking people into furlough and out again. And to hear Dave talking about how his senior team had made a commitment to show the love to their team by being out there to greet the staff at 5 a.m, rain or shine, as they came back with a sort of a welcome backpack with the words made with love on, and actually to just thinking about using those sort of emotive terms and thinking about culture in that way was really inspirational. So I love that story of how, I guess, this community has found some little pockets of ways of developing each other. So great stuff there.
Great, thank you, Patrick. And so I've got Lizzie's driving the slides as well, so we're very much going to do a tag team on this. So if we get going on our slides, Lizzie, very much going to just set a little bit of the scene. you were asked this question as a little primer: what does resilience mean to you? And that's very much our topic today, around resilience in this time of adversity and in points in our lives, and how can we really respond to, prepare for the bumps in the road. And Lizzie's going to share her story, and we're going to have the opportunity to ask her questions. We're going to have the opportunity to go into breakout rooms and really discuss the topic together. In terms of just looking at what does resilience mean to you, and if I look at my journey and I think about my journey as an England under-18 coach, oftentimes what you're looking to do is, you know, there's a big question is actually, does resilience come from adversity, and do we need to have trauma and adversity to really grow resilience? And that's not always the case, but what we do need to think is, how can we create some bumps in the road so that we can prepare for and grow that resilience over time? You know, whether that's in the case of you doing that for, like I do in the sort of international arena for players, but also as a parent, how can you create opportunities for failure so that we can grow that resilience muscle? And within business, how do we prepare and respond to the bumps on the road? And if we travel in a smooth road and haven't got those bumps, how are we ready when they do come? You know, they talk about the smooth seas never made a skilled sailor. And how do we be much more intentional around resilience and the growth of that resilience? So I thought we would just get into things straight away. This is an interactive forum. On the screen, there's lots of space for you to write, what does resilience mean to you? So if you go to the top of your screen, you can see the view options. And if you pick annotate, you can just annotate, what does resilience mean to you? And again, it's anonymous, so just fire away and we'll see what emerges. Nice blue sky, whoever's going to get to that first. Nice clear roadway. Off we go. So never giving up, learning from failure, the ability to endure and learn from tough times, being brave in uncertainty, proactive as well as reactive, absolutely, and a process to have outcomes, positive outcomes from adversity. Got some nice staying strong. This is where who types over who as we go. Great. Understanding, oneself and proactively knowing how to cope with unexpected things, that growth mindset that we talk about. So if we just move on to the next screen, I think the key thing is looking at resilience as this idea is a balancing fulcrum. We're often maybe born, some people might be born to some degree more resilience, or have had experiences in their life that might have been quite negative and reduced their ability to be more resilient. But we know that you can grow your resilience over time, and actually often through adverse experiences we can have opportunities to have positive support to really grow that. But equally we can continue to grow it in a way that actually when adversity comes, we're able to, I talk about flourish under fire within this. And actually Lizzie's story is really about a bucket load of insights around support, positive supports that allows us to grow that resilience. So if we go on to the next slide, Lizzie. So this is an insights, a kind of resilient insight wheel that we're going to take on a journey with us. And so we're going to explore these as we go through the story, and Lizzie's going to really share her story around positive identity and self-worth, the idea of being really intentional about resilience and preparing for possibilities and embracing failure. They're going to be 4 key areas that Lizzie's going to really bring to life. But also what's important here is the idea of clarity on what you can control, what you can influence. But equally, it's around creating that challenge and that support network for you to be resilient. I suppose a wrapper is idea of this prioritizing health and well-being and having a reflective practice is at the heart of resilience. So what we want to do with this is, if you want to either take a picture of this resilience insights wheel and just take it on a journey with you, and anything that kind of might come up for you as you note. So we've got a scale from 1 to 10 where you can start thinking around, am I at a 1 or a 10 in terms of how confident do I feel, and how much personal practice that I put away, let's say, for about being intentional about resilience. And we'll come back to this as we go. So what I'll do is I'll also put it in the chat, and you can download it if you want, or take a picture. Either way, up to you. But it's a reflective tool for us to go on the journey with Lizzie. Okay, so over to Lizzie.
Hi everyone, thank you. Thanks Sarah there, and apologies for those slight technical difficulties, nothing like a few Zoom challenges to start the day. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's really, really great to have the chance to share some of my experiences from the world of elite sport. As we've reflected, it feels like there's never been a more important time for us to practice and build our resilience. The world seems to have changed fairly significantly in the last few months, and it feels like there will be lots of continued challenges ahead as well. And as Sarah mentioned, it seems like there can sometimes be a bit of a misconception that resilience is just an outcome of adversity, that we need to go through tough times in order to become resilient. And whilst that can obviously be true, I really think that resilience is a skill that we can develop rain or shine. And hopefully today is going to offer some insights and sharings that allow us to start being more intentional about building this crucial skill. Now, Sarah's spoken about a number of different components there on the wheel, on that kind of balance wheel of resilience, but I'm really going to hone in on a couple of these because they're so relevant to my own experiences in sport. So I know some of you guys have already heard me talk, but for those of you who haven't, a little bit about me to begin with. I always loved the water, always loved swimming. Ever since I was just a tiny little baby, my parents said that if I was upset when I was a baby, all they had to do was put me in or near some form of water, which doesn't sound like very legitimate parenting to me. They said that they knew I had talent at the age of 6 when I swam a mile. Seems a bit excessive for a 6-year-old. But at that age, I was also exceptionally talented at reciting the alphabet backwards. So they just didn't know what my future held. I began to progress through the ranks of the local swimming club and started to excel, particularly at backstroke. And at the age of 13, by the age of 13, I was swimming about 60 kilometers a week, about 24 to 25 hours of training per week, balancing that with full-time education and just being an awkward, gawky teenager trying to find my place in the world. I made my first senior team at the age of 15, and from there would go on to win a number of medals at World Championships, the European Championships, and the Commonwealth Games as well. I also competed for Team GB at 2 Olympic Games, which I'll go into a bit more detail about in a minute. I retired back in 2018, so about 2 years ago now, but I feel incredibly lucky to have taken the sport that I loved to the level that I did. Before I talk about some more of my kind of experiences in terms of results and things, I wanted to touch a little bit more on this notion of preparing for adversity. And I think sports people have a reputation for being highly adept at preparing for pressure and how to respond optimally when that dial is turned up to max. In fact, a lot of our training is spent intentionally trying to replicate both physically and mentally the conditions under which we'll have to perform, so that our actions under pressure are practiced and they're automated. And the second lesson was all about confidence, because I took a really big hit to my confidence not achieving that goal in London. And afterwards, I noticed a really distinct change in my body language and my mindset. I didn't feel so self-assured. And I realized a long time after that race, reflecting back, I realized that I'd been relying on that race to prove my self-worth. And so to finish off with, I just want to talk a little bit more about the F word, failure, and why it's so relevant to so many of us right now. I think in our society, failure is a really negatively charged word. No one wants to be a failure. No one wants to fail at anything. And yet resilience is a desirable skill. It's enviable, which I think is probably a little bit ironic, because one of the ways that we develop our resilience is to put ourselves through, the bumps in the road, to fail. These little setbacks and these little obstacles aren't a reflection of us, but just a result of our challenging circumstances. And I think the more that you can understand that you are not your failures, the more that you can engage with risk. You can try new things. You can be innovative and creative, because you know the consequences of things not going to plan are not catastrophic to your self-worth. I think separating your identity in this way is also super, super important for stress management. It means you can give life your all. You can put yourself out there, safe in the knowledge that actually it'll be okay if things don't go to plan. So I think an important lesson for me from my career, and if I could, share a message kind of going forwards, is to be proud of your failures. Take ownership of them just as you would your successes. It's easy for us to take ownership of our successes. It's much harder for us to be proud of our failures. But our failures are an indication that we're pushing our boundaries and that we're challenging our limits. And I think that's a really positive thing.
Great, thank you, Lizzie. Rebecca, do you want to jump on and ask your question? I think it dovetails really nicely.
Hi, yeah, sorry, I just realised I didn't even spell it right, did I? But I guess I was thinking, thank you, Lizzie, for sharing your story. That was kind of really interesting and really good to hear. I guess I was thinking, and obviously you mentioned there about psychologists that you have within the sport and things, but like, to what extent do you think if you'd started to explore some of the kind of the themes and stuff around your athletic identity whilst you were still competing, to what extent do you think you would have been receptive to it? And I guess because sometimes I think sometimes athletes, I think, find that a hard concept whilst they're still competing, because they almost can see that as like, oh, I don't want to take focus away from my sport if I suddenly start thinking about other parts of myself, even though it's not about that. But then sometimes you hear a lot of athletes come into that realization sort of post-competing.
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. It's actually one of our biggest challenges in helping athletes prepare for life beyond sport, is because during sport, it's very difficult for us to think of ourselves as anything other than athletes. So we do have this one identity, and we find it very difficult, as you say, to say, okay, I'm going to spend some time thinking about some of my other interests, because in my mind, that then equates to, well, I've not given sport everything. And I think the biggest realization for me, and this did start to happen whilst I was still competing a little bit, as you say, it is a reflective piece as well. But I think the biggest thing for me was that it's almost that alleviating stress piece. To know that there was far more to me than being a swimmer helped reduce my stress going into big competitions so much. Because if all you've got is the result of that race, the thought of underperformance is terrifying, because it's catastrophic to who you are. Whereas, the more that you can broaden those aspects of your identity and work out who you are beyond that, the safer you are in the knowledge that, hey, a result's a result, but I'm going to be okay through it. And it's a really difficult one. We have lots of challenges now. I help work with athletes, trying to help them expand their identity a bit. And it's a really, really valid point, and it's not an easy thing to do. I think in general, there have been some studies done as well that does show that athletes who have other interests tend to be more successful, because they've got a more balanced experience of their career, as opposed to those ones who blinkers on, will not think about anything else. So yeah, it's not an easy journey, but it seems like all the indications are for being more than your ability, as I said, to kick a ball or swim in a pool.
So we're looking at around those 4 areas that we looked at on the poll. So with resilience is intentional as a wrapper, and then we're going to look at embracing failure, preparing for possibilities, and building positive identity and self-worth. But we're going to look at it at the role of the individual in creating a resilient mindset, and then we're going to look at it, the role of an organization, a leader, enabling a resilient culture. So again, the group leader, if they just take a photograph of those, or already have them with them, and if you want to take a photograph of that with you as you go, please do.